Tonight we're taking a closer look as the DEA says it will not push to reclassify marijuana. What does that mean? Why won't they do it? And why government policy on this issue is stunningly hypocritical. This is a reality check you won't see anywhere else. Well, last week the DEA announced that it will not push to reschedule marijuana, more correctly called cannabis. So what is the DEA talking about when it says rescheduling? Well, to understand that, first of all, you have to understand the drug schedule. The U.S. government uses a 5-tier system for drug classification. A Schedule 5 drug would be a drug determined to have very little risk of abuse and very high medical use. An example of a Schedule 5 drug would be cough medicine like Robitussin AC. Cannabis right now is a Schedule 1 drug. That means it has no accepted medical use and has a high risk of abuse. So cannabis, it remains scheduled the same way as a deadly drug like heroin. Now the hope was that cannabis would at the very least, be rescheduled as a Schedule 2 drug. These drugs still have high risk of abuse. Drugs like oxycodone, those are Schedule 2 drugs. And yet the DEA claims that cannabis is more dangerous and of less value.
We saw just instantly a huge difference in the light behind his eyes, his awareness of what else was in the room. It was like the world sort of went from his world being here to his world kind of being maybe here. And he could see other people and he was aware that we were somewhere different.
Well, earlier this year, I introduced you to Katie and her little boy, Hawk. Hawk suffers from a serious disease and he takes CBD oil, a cannabis oil that is saving his life. But Hawk is not alone. There are tens of thousands of people, men, women, and children across the nation who are taking cannabis oil to treat all kinds of conditions: epilepsy, Crohn's disease, cancer, and many other conditions. Oh, and by the way, taking cannabis oil, whether CBD oil or even THCA oil, does not get you high.
Pull it up into a syringe and he just gets 0.02 3 times a day.
So when so many people are getting incredible help from cannabis oil, how can the DEA claim there is no medical value? Consider the wording used. The drug has a high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use. Accepted by whom? The Department of Health and Human Services, the FDA? See, the DEA claim that not enough study has been done, but there's a reason for that. Because cannabis is a Schedule 1 drug, which means doctors, universities, and research facilities, they can't study it because it's a crime to possess it. And right now, only one facility in the entire United States is allowed to legally grow cannabis to supply to researchers. That's the University of Mississippi. The DEA says it will now consider expanding the number of DEA-registered marijuana manufacturers. But all that aside, I want to show you something that I was one of the first reporters in the nation to reveal just 3 years ago. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services actually holds the patent on cannabis oil for medical use. That patent is titled Cannabinoids as Antioxidants and Neuroprotectants. It was awarded to the Department of Health and Human Services in October of 2003. It was filed 4 years earlier in 1999 by a group of scientists from the National Institute of Mental Health, which is part of the National Institutes of Health. So what you need to know is that the patent gives the federal government exclusive rights on the use of cannabinoids for treating neurological diseases, diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and stroke, and diseases caused by oxidative stress such as heart attack, Crohn's disease, diabetes, and arthritis. Which means that while the DEA, the FDA, and HHS claim there is no evidence of any medical value for cannabis, and while tens of thousands of families struggle to get life-saving oil for their kids, the feds know enough about the value of cannabis to hold a patent on it as medicine. Now, how is that acceptable? That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that tonight on Twitter.